الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. What time is it now? 9:20? Okay, I wanted to just, it probably will not be possible for us to finish all the conditions, and I sort of thought about it, if I can cram the rest of the conditions into this session, but it will be unfair. The prerequisites of the prayer are extremely important. So it is okay that we take our time, going over the prerequisites of prayer, because they are important and they are also somewhat complicated. We talked about, ritual purity. We didn't spend that much time in ritual purity because this is not complicated. It's everybody knows. It's a matter of consensus. You do have to have wudu to pray. And certainly ghusl if you needed the ghusl, but you need to be ritually pure. And then the commencement of time, this was a little bit complicated, so we give it some time, an entire session. Covering the nakedness, we gave it an entire session also, because it's also a little bit complicated, which is satr al-awra, covering one's nakedness. And I think today we'll just be talking about physical purity. And we will defer the discussion of facing the Qibla and the intention, the niyyah, to next time, inshallah, when we come back on September 9th. For people who, follow us on Facebook, when we come back on September 9th, the sound will be better because I'll have a microphone. Someone told me, someone is sending me a microphone in the mail to improve the sound. So, may Allah reward them. But at any rate, so today we will talk about physical purity. And like we usually do, I like to point out the Hanbali position, because that's the book that we're going over, and point out some of the, not in every detail, but we point out the position of the three other Madhhab, Hanafi, Maliki, and Shafi'i. And sometimes also we highlight concessions. And some people may think that I am a little bit too loose, like when it comes to giving people concessions. And this is not correct. In the Hanbali Madhhab, which people think is the strictest Madhhab, in the Hanbali Madhhab, actually, Imam Ahmad himself, his position, his clear position, reported explicitly from him, is that when people act upon concessions, even if they leave their madhhab, he himself allowed his disciples to leave his fatwa and shop for fatwa. Go to halaqat al-Madaniyin bil-Rassafa and ask them, and if they tell you halal, take it from them. That's what Imam Ahmad said. They asked him, if I go to halaqat al-Madaniyin, the Madani's circle in al-Rassafa, in a place called the Rassafa in Baghdad, and I ask any one of them, any one of the scholars, and they tell me it is halal, can I take it? Imam Ahmad said to them, yes, you can take it. They said to him one time, you're so strict, you give us like strict, they didn't tell him, you're so strict. They said to him, أحيانا يشتد علينا ما تقول. Sometimes it is hard for us to follow you. Can we follow someone else? Can we ask someone else? He said, yes, go and ask Abdul Wahab, which is al-Warraq. They one time asked him, can we, someone who had a talaq issue, and Imam Ahmad said to him, it happened, it actualized. And then he said to him, can I find someone else to ask? He said to him, اذهب فاسأل العلماء, اذهب فاسأل أبا ثور. And this explicitly, frequently reported from Imam Ahmad. So the point of tatabbu' al-rukhas, talaqqut al-rukhas, that is this praised, is when you are shopping without need. It is just that you're trying to find facilitation in every matter and shop without need for concessions and exits and easy way out. But whenever someone needs a concession, whenever someone feels that one particular ruling is hard for them and needs a concession, it is okay to take the concession given that it is coming also from a trustworthy source. Because Imam Ahmad said to them, go to Halaqat al-Madaniyin and Rasafa. He did not tell them, pick whatever you want from the paper or TV, like, TV talk shows or something like that. No, he told them to go to the circle of al-Madaniyin, the Madanese scholars in Rasafa. He told them, go ask Abdul Wahab, which is a trustworthy scholar. Go ask Aba Thawr, another trustworthy scholar. So if the concession is coming from a trustworthy source, particularly if it is not only, particularly if it is the authorized view in one of the other madhhab, then we certainly can take it. We will see here how, there are authorized views in the Hanafi and Maliki madhabs that are very helpful concessions, particularly for people who have obsessions. We want to say to those people, particularly people who are obsessive, we want to tell them, take the concessions of each and every mujtahid in the history of Islam. Take the concessions, unless you make up a position that is by consensus unacceptable, through patchwork, al-Fiqh, then it is not acceptable. This is one condition. The other condition is, unless you are certain they're wrong. But how could you be certain that Abu Hanifa is wrong? You have another issue here. If you're certain that Malik or Abu Hanifa or Shafi'i was wrong and you are who you are, you have another issue. You have an issue like a psychological issue. You have a mental issue. I'm sorry. There is something that needs to be treated. The level of certainty, when you reach that, when you say, I am certain that one entire madhhab is wrong, and even though the scholars of this madhhab, they maintained the position of their founders for 1400 years, scores of scholars, not scores of scholars, hundreds, thousands of scholars in every field and every discipline, they maintained the position of their founders, and you are certain that they were wrong. I am sorry, this is an emotional disturbance. I think that you do need some therapy. It really is. This does not mean that you may not think that they were wrong. You could think they were wrong, because that is natural, that's just human. Whenever you're presented with two different positions, you may be inclined to one position. I'm talking about certainty, that you're certain they are wrong. There is a huge difference, right? You could be very comfortable that this is the right position, but to reach certainty that the other position was wrong is basically unattainable at your level, particularly if that position is the position of is the authorized position of an entire madhhab. Thousands of scholars in all fields, in all disciplines, in hadith, in fiqh, in tasawwuf, in this, in that. Thousands of scholars have basically held this position, and you are certain that it was wrong. That is an issue that requires you to basically go back and really examine your heart, because you have a problem with your heart. So basically, tatabbu' al-rukhas. Keep in mind that tatabbu' al-rukhas, and I'm just going all the way here to clarify this issue, because tashaddud, strictness is unhealthy, and it is particularly in our times, particularly in where we live, And if we want to invite people to this religion, and if we want our own people, our own Muslims, to stay within the bounds of this religion, then strictness is not conducive to any of the above. Because what we're doing most of the time is preaching to the choir. And we're happy that we are basically sort of faking righteousness in front of each other, and there are tons of people out there that are getting lost because they feel that we are merciless to them, we're brutal, or we're always critical, we're always telling them this is wrong, this is haram, this is that. This. When it comes to this particular issue, the issue of physical purity, I have seen a lot of people with lots of obsessions, and I am telling them, if you get concessions from each and every valid ijtihad from a mujtahid, from an Imam mujtahid, and act upon all of those concessions together, you should be fine. And that is what you should be doing, because causing yourself a hardship will eventually make you dislike the path, dislike the whole path, and could be a fitna for you and your deen. And don't be deceived by your level of strictness now. I have seen people who make a complete U-turn after they have become much more knowledgeable and much more stricter than most of us in this room. So it is important that you enjoy that journey. It is important that you have comfort and ease in that journey. And if there is some striving, and if there is some burden, it is an enjoyable burden still, an enjoyable striving. So strictness is not that helpful. Talaqqut al-rukhas, tatabbu al-rukhas, basically to follow all of the concessions, even without hardship, is still a controversial issue. And some of the scholars said that as long as they're coming from mujtahideen, these concessions are covered, you are allowed to take all of the concessions that are coming from the mujtahideen. But the middle position here is that you can take all of the concessions with these conditions. They're coming from mujtahideen, you do have a need to basically follow the concession. Your heart is not certain that this is wrong, that this is not what Allah wanted. You're not certain because the Prophet ﷺ said, ask your heart. Regardless of how many fatwas you get, ask your heart. If your heart is certain this is not what Allah wanted of me, then I cannot tell you that okay, go ahead and take it. If your heart is certain. So your heart is, if your heart is certain, you cannot take the concession. If you don't have a need for it, you cannot be following the concession all over the place. You're just following your Imam, your Shaykh, your Madhhab, this, that, and you're not seeking out the concessions without a need for them. And then what matters the most, and this is on top of the list, is that you're getting those concessions from mujtahid imams, not from talk shows, not from the newspaper, not from a friend of yours, or like we were having a friendly discussion and someone came up with this idea or this hukm or this fatwa. No, you're taking them from mujtahid imams. In this case, you could follow all the concessions you want. So we're talking about physical purity here. Imam ibn Qudamah rahimahullah said, الشرط الرابع الطهارة من النجاسة في بدنه وثوبه وموضع صلاته إلا النجاسة المعفو عنها كيسير الدم ونحوه. Fourth, الطهارة من النجاسة, physical purity. طهارة من النجاسة is to be pure from impurities. في بدنه وثوبه وموضع الصلاة, of the physical purity of the body, بدنه, ثوبه, garment, وموضع صلاته, and place of prayer. You do not need to be removing the najasa from anywhere else. Even your place of prayer, what you need to be making sure of is that you're not touching the najasa when you're standing or prostrating. That's it. If there is najasa between you and your place of prostration, but you're not touching it when you prostrate, that najasa you do not need to remove. It is not a condition of validity. You don't even need to remove it. So Muslims are not necessary. Muslims we like purity, we like to remove the najasa. But you're not required religiously, because a lot of people work with najasa. Can I mention you are like many professions that, or could you think of many professions that work with najasa? So in this case, you're not required to remove the najasa from all of your environment, because that is not doable. What you're required to do is to remove the najasa when you're praying. When you're praying. Outside of the prayer, you're not even required to do it. When you're praying, you're required to remove the najasa from your body, from your garment, and from the place on the ground that you will come in contact with when you're standing and when you're prostrating. And that's it. Yes?
I have a baby, and sometimes when I'm praying, she's crying, so I have to take her. I don't know if it's true, but if her diaper is not clean, can I still take her and play with her, or?
No, if your baby's diaper is not clean, that will be a problem. But if you're certain that the diaper is not clean, are you certain that the diaper is not clean? Yeah, because it is also important that we do not carry najasa. It is also important that we do not carry the najasa. But if you want to take the Hanafi position is easier here, and you could take it. Carrying the najasa, as long as it is not coming in contact, the najasa itself is not coming in contact with your body, garment, or place of prostration, is fine. If the najasa is wrapped, and your baby is wrapped, the najasa is wrapped, you're fine. Take that concession if you need it. So, but we're talking here about in the Hanbali position, you cannot carry the najasa unless it is a najasa inside the najasa that is inside the stomach. In this case, you're carrying a najasa, because when you carry someone, you're carrying whatever najasa is inside their stomach, even if it is an animal.
What about like if alcohol is dropped in your clothes? If you have maybe someone threw alcohol by mistake on you and your clothes has alcohol, can we still pray?
You have alcohol on your clothes?
Yeah.
Hanbali wise, no, but if you want a concession here, if you need it, but alcohol, I don't know why you need a concession. You're talking about perfumes.
Yes.
You're talking about perfumes, right? Or what alcohol?
Because my family is like, my in-laws are converts, so they drink, and sometimes like me, like by mistake falls on my clothes. So do I have to change the clothes and then pray, or can I just pray with that?
Okay, so the position in the Madhhab is that you need to change your clothes. But alcohol is not physically impure according to many scholars, and I believe that this is the stronger position. That alcohol is impure to consume, not physically impure to touch. So that is a valid concession to take. This is not the position of the Madhhab though. Okay, so having said that, where the Sheikh said, إِلَّا النَّجَاسَةَ الْمَعْفُوَّ عَنْهَا كَيَسِيرِ الدَّمِ وَنَحْوِهِ, except for the impurity that is exempted, such as a little blood or the like. The najasa that is exempted in the Hanbali madhab is the little blood and the little pus and stuff like this. This is exempt, no problem. You don't need to worry about it. In the Hanafi madhab, the najasa that is exempted is a very good concession, particularly for people who have obsessions. Take the Hanafi position. In the Hanafi position, anything that is less than the concavity of your hand, this taqa'ur al-kaf, this one, this concavity of your hand here, anything that is less than this is okay, no problem. If you pray with any najasa that is less than this, is okay, no problem. They will say it's makruh, karahat tanzih. They will say it is makruh, it is disliked. It is disliked in the Hanafi Madhhab. But if it is less than this, it is okay. Therefore, people who obsess about razaz al-bawl, you know, the splashback of the urine. Hanafi-wise, all of this will be less. If you collect all of this, it will be less than this. That's fine. You don't need to worry about it. If you have that obsession, take the Hanafi position. This is the position of Imam Abu Hanifa. You know, the first, the oldest, the earliest of the four Imams. You can take it and be very happy with it. If you have obsessions, take the position of Imam Abu Hanifa. If it is less than this, the najasa is less than this on your body or garment, it is fine. It does not invalidate your prayer. Even though it is disliked, makruh, yes, it would be disliked, and it would be preferred that you remove it. But if you will not be able to remove it, or it is such that the removal causes hardship, or you have obsessions, you may take that position. Okay, keep in mind also that the Malikis, they have a position that is, particularly when it comes to underwear, the Malikis don't mind the stains in the underwear because they say that this is umum al-balwa, that it is inevitable that people will have stains in their underwear, you know, from the back, well, you know, because particularly if you wipe and you don't wash, and then you sweat, your underwear will have a little bit of a stain. That is fine. That's the Maliki. That's the position of Imam Malik. You know, Najm Sunan. You can take it. It's fine. If you obsess about this issue, take the concession of Imam Malik here. And then he says, Imam ibn Qudamah rahimahullah said, وَإِنْ صَلَّى وَعَلَيْهِ نَجَاسَةٌ لَمْ يَكُنْ عَلِمَ بِهَا. If he prays with impurity on him that he is unaware of, أَوْ عَلِمَ بِهَا ثُمَّ نَسِيَهَا فَصَلَاتُهُ صَحِيحَةٌ. Or that he knew of, but then he forgot it, then his prayer is valid. It's weird. I have a symbol of consensus here. That's not even correct in the Hanbali Madhhab. I don't know why I have this symbol. There is a symbol of consensus there, right? Remove that, cross it. There is no consensus here.
What is that?
The symbol of consensus next to that statement. If he prays with impurity on him that he is unaware of, or that he knew of but then forgot, then his prayer is valid. Meaning, if you forget and you pray and you have some impurity, you knew that you had impurity on your garment, and then you forgot, and then you prayed while forgetting, or you did not know that you had impurity on your garment. You finished the prayer, and you look, and here it is, impurity on your garment. The Shaykh, Imam ibn Qudamah, is saying your salah is valid. I have a symbol of consensus next to this. That's wrong. There is no consensus there. I don't know what got this symbol here. There is no consensus. In fact, in the authorized position of the Hanbali Madhhab, your salah is invalid. But take Imam ibn Qudamah's position here. Take this one. This one is good. But the authorized position of the Hanbali Madhhab, just for your information, is that your salah is invalid. Because the removal of impurity is a requirement for everyone. مع العلم والقدرة ودون العلم والقدرة. With knowledge and ability to remove, and without that. So anyway, But just cross the symbol of consensus because it's not a consensus, and keep acting upon this because it's good for you. And it is actually the stronger position. And Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah supported this position, went to great lengths to support this position. That whenever you are unaware, ignorant of something, you do not need to go back and repeat it. You're fine. And Ibn Taymiyyah mentioned two particular hadith from the Prophet that are extremely strong in this regard. Do you remember the hadith of the man who didn't know how to pray? You remember the hadith where the Prophet instructed them on how to pray because his prayer was, missing pillars and so on, al-Musi' salata. This particular man, do you find in any report that the Prophet told him, go back and repeat all of the prayers, your previous prayers? None. So Ibn Taymiyyah says that this is a man who compromised the pillars of the prayer. The Prophet did not tell him, go back and repeat it. Even though, the prayer is known to all the Muslims at the time, and it is common knowledge. But even though it was common knowledge to Muslims, but the Prophet did not ask him. Do you remember the hadith of the woman who used to have prolonged bleeding, and she came to the Prophet ﷺ, and she said, "Inni ustahadu haydatan shadidatan ad'u laha as-salata was-sawm." I have, severe menstrual bleeding, prolonged severe menstrual bleeding, for which I, for which I stay away from, or Salah and Sawm, for which I have been staying away from Salah and Sawm. The Prophet ﷺ told her, you don't need to stay away from Salah and Sawm. You could just, تحيضي في علم الله 6 أيام أو 7 أيام. You could just avoid, Salah and Sawm for 6 or 7 days, and then you clean yourself and then you pray. Did the Prophet ﷺ say to this woman, go back and repeat all of the salawat that you were missing unknowingly? No, he did not. These are indication that people who are forgetful or ignorant are not bound by their mistakes, and they do not need to go back and repeat anything in the future. And if you were making taqleed of some imam, and and now you discovered that this position was a weak position, you do not need to go back and repeat anything. You never need to go back and repeat anything. And that is the stronger position. However, if you want it, if this is not the authorized position in the Madhhab. In the Madhhab, if you do not know that there is impurity on your garment, or you forgot and you prayed, at the end of the prayer, you discovered that you had impurity, you need to repeat that prayer, the authorized position. Then Imam Ibn Qudamah said, وَإِنْ عَلِمَ بِهَا We did not even talk about the proof that why is it that removing the najasa is a condition of validity? There is a hadith reported from Abi Sa'id al-Khudri. Remember when this hadith, when the Prophet ﷺ was praying, and then he took, it's in your sharh, when he took off his sandals and he prayed, put them next to him, and then the Sahaba did the same thing, and the Prophet ﷺ after the Salah said to them, why did you take off your sandals? They said, we saw you take off your sandals, so we took off our sandals. And he said, Jibreel came and told me that there is filth on them, so I took them off. What this hadith says that it is important that you avoid najasa in your prayer. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also said in the Quran, وَثِيَابَكَ فَطَهِّرْ, and your garment you should purify. وَثِيَابَكَ فَطَهِّرْ, the scholars said if this does not apply, ثِيَابَكَ فَطَهِّرْ, this does not apply outside of the prayer. You're not commanded to purify yourself all the time outside of the prayer. So we're only left with the obligation to do this in the prayer. Therefore, it is a condition of validity. That jump, therefore, it is a condition of validity, some scholars did not agree with this. Imam Malik did not agree with this. He did not feel that since it is an obligation, it is a condition of validity. Imam Malik said it is not a condition of validity. It is only an obligation. In the Maliki Madhhab, there are some Maliki scholars who even say that removing the najasa is a sunnah. Some of the clarifying scholars of the Maliki Madhhab thereafter said they meant it is established through the sunnah. They did not mean it is only recommended. And they claim that the Maliki Madhhab is in agreement that it is an obligation, that you're sinful if you do not remove the najasa. But in the Maliki Madhhab, it is not a condition of validity. Therefore, they tell you, if you pray intently with najasa on you, and the time is not over, they tell you repeat the salah. If you prayed intently with najasa on you, and the time is over, you do not need to repeat the salah in the Maliki Madhhab. And that is by their agreement within the Maliki Madhhab. Therefore, the Malikis believe that it is an obligation to remove the najasa, but they do not believe it's a condition of validity, because they say, in order for this to be a condition of validity, I need a statement from Allah or the Messenger that if you don't remove the najasa, your salah is invalid. I have statements that confer enough evidence that it is an obligation, but I don't have a statement that confers enough evidence that it is a condition of validity or a prerequisite. Hanafis, this was the position of Imam al-Shafi'i in his Qadim, in his old madhhab, before he moved to Egypt, also, like Imam Malik. And in Qadim, there are many similarities between Imam al-Shafi'i and Imam Malik in Qadim, in the old madhhab. And this is the position that Shawkani chose in Nail al-Awtar, that it is an obligation, but it is not a condition of validity. It's an obligation, it's not a condition of validity. In this case, people who are old, you don't really need to torment them, because they may have issues with the removal of najasa. People who are sick, use concessions with people who need it. You don't need to use the concessions for yourself, but use concessions with people who need it. Older people, sicker people, don't be too particular about some of these issues, because according to some of the imams, they're not required. Even the entire removal of najasa, according to some, is not a condition of validity. We're going back here, and وَإِنْ عَلِمَ بِهَا فِي الصَّلَاةِ أَزَالَهَا وَبَنَى عَلَى صَلَاتِهِ. If he knows of it while he is in prayer, he must remove it and carry on with his prayer. And that is, I have a symbol of consensus here, that is a real consensus. If you will not need to move too much to remove it, then you remove it and you can carry on with your salah by agreement. Just like the hadith of the Prophet. If all it will take, like you do like him sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and take off your sandals like this while you're facing the Qibla, and that's it. That is all it takes. If all it takes is to do this, but if I... Wired up? You do like this. And then you carry on with you're facing the Qibla. This movement is not, that's fine. You could do this. You could do this. And this, by agreement, you carry on with your salah. If you're gonna have to go and wash, because it's Satr al-Awra and you have to wash the najasa and stuff, this is too much movement. That would not be allowed in the prayer. والأرض كلها مسجد تصح الصلاة فيها إلا المقبرة أو المقبرة والحمام والحش أو الحش وأعطان الإبل وقارعة الطريق. والأرض كلها مسجد تصح الصلاة فيها إلا المقبرة والحمام والحش وأعطان الإبل وقارعة الطريق. The entire earth is a place of prayer in which prayer is valid. Because the Prophet ﷺ said, وجعلت لي الأرض مسجدا وطهورا فأيما رجل من أمتي حضرته الصلاة فعنده مسجده وطهوره. So the whole earth was made for me as a masjid, as a place of prayer and a source of tahara or purification. Whenever a man of my ummah or someone of my ummah, the salah, whenever it's time for the salah for someone of my ummah, then he will have by him his masjid, his place of prayer, and his tahur and source of purification. إلا المقبرة والحمام. المقبرة والحمام, there is a report about المقبرة والحمام. It's a little controversial, but there is, some of the scholars authenticated it. And in the Hanbali Madhhab, this level of authenticity is certainly a source of evidence in the Hanbali Madhhab. A hadith that is not too weak, a hadith where some of the scholars authenticated it, meaning that it is not like an extremely weak hadith, is certainly a source of evidence in the madhhab. So the Prophet ﷺ said, الأرض كلها مسجد إلا المقبرة والحمام, the whole earth is a masjid except for al-Maqbara wal-Hammam. Maqbara is the graveyard, Hammam is the bathroom, not the lavatory, the bathroom where people wash, not where they relieve themselves. Hammam is different from the lavatory. Hammam is the bathroom. Al-Haj is the lavatory. So that is different. But the Prophet said that you can pray anywhere except in the graveyard and the bathroom. The bathroom is when people bathe. Al-Haj, he added Al-Haj here. This is mentioned in a hadith that is pretty weak, that is weak, not pretty weak, that is weak, still work in evidence in the Hanbali Madhhab. But for those people who don't act about the weak hadith, they may still say that Al-Haj is the place, the lavatory is a place that you cannot pray in because of the Prophet. If there is a report where the Prophet forbids praying in the bathroom, which is the place where people bathe, then by analogy, by extension, the Haj should be worse. The lavatory should be worse than places where people just shower and bathe. Certainly, the al-Maqbara, the graveyard, all of the salawat are forbidden in the Maqbara, the graveyard, except janazah. Because the Prophet, you remember the story where the Prophet there was like a black lady that used to clean the masjid and she died and they buried her. They did not tell the Prophet ﷺ of her death. And then he went to her grave and prayed, basically to recognize the contribution, to recognize her sincerity, her contribution. Because the Prophet did not really pray for every Sahabi. He did not pray for everyone who died in his time. But she used to contribute to the community. So he went out to her grave and prayed because they had buried her before he was informed. So that hadith tells us that there is that there is an exception for janazah in particular. Then he said, وَأَعْطَانَا الْإِبِلِ. أَعْطَانَا الْإِبِلِ is certainly, there is a hadith, this hadith is reported by Muslim from Jabir ibn Samurah radiallahu anhu, where the Prophet ﷺ was asked, نُصَلِّي فِي أَعْطَانِ الْإِبِلِ, can we pray in أَعْطَانِ الْإِبِلِ, the stables of camels? And the Prophet ﷺ said, no, clearly. So you do not pray in أَعْطَانِ الْإِبِلِ, the stables of camels. وَقَارِعَةَ الطَّرِيقِ, and the middle of the road. It's called محجة الطريق, it's called قارعة الطريق. There is a hadith where 7 places seven places. The hadith adds adds the dumpster, مزبلة, or yeah. So and this hadith is working evidence for the Hanbalis. So the Hanbalis add dumpster also to this, and they add the majzara, they add the slaughterhouses to this, to these five that were mentioned here. But if someone does not work on, this weak hadith because it is weak and they believe that it is not a source of evidence, particularly when it comes to rulings, then they may extend al-maqbara wal-hammam to these other things by analogy. And sometimes it's qiyas al-awla, preferred analogy, superior analogy. Because when you have superior analogy, you have inferior analogy, and you have equal analogy. Equal analogy where the two are exactly the same. So when the Prophet ﷺ says, don't pray in... two are the same, equal. But a superior analogy is when the Prophet says, don't pray in the bathrooms. Because there is a possibility that there is najasa, where people bathe and people shower and so on. So you don't go and pray in the lavatory and say that there is no hadith. He told you don't pray in the bathroom. You're praying in the lavatory. That doesn't make sense. This is a superior analogy. Superior analogy. If he told you don't pray in the bathroom, it makes perfect sense that you don't pray in the lavatory. If he told you don't urinate in stagnant water, it makes perfect sense that you don't defecate in stagnant water. That's called superior analogy, okay? And then you have inferior. Inferior analogy is not evidence according to many because it has to be either equal or superior. Equal or superior. So in this case, you could add al-mazbala to a'tan al-ibil. For instance, you could say al-mazbala, which is the dumpster, is like a'tan al-ibil, stables of camels. The possibility of filth in a dumpster is like the possibility of filth in a'tan al-ibil or something of that nature. But at any rate, these are established through reports or analogy. The ones that are established through reports here is that you cannot pray in the graveyard except for the funeral prayer. You cannot pray in the bathroom, established through a report from the Prophet ﷺ that's authenticated by some. You cannot pray in a'tan al-ibil, which are the stables of camels. Established through weak report and analogy would be the lavatory, dumpsters, slaughterhouses. Established through weak report only is qari'at al-tariq, which is in the middle of the road, in the middle of the road, because there is no equal or superior analogy to anything. Because the point here in not praying in qari'at al-tariq is not about the avoidance of najasa, it is about not inconveniencing people. Because when you pray in the middle of the road, you're inconveniencing people. So they made an exception for praying in the middle of the road is the overflow of the masjid. If the masjid overflew, then you could pray in the middle of the road if that would not cause a problem to the people of that neighborhood. So that will bring us to the end of this particular condition, inshallah. And when you come back on September 9th, we will finish facing the Qibla in intention, and we will wrap up the whole chapter on the conditions of validity or the prerequisites of prayer. Remember them: tahara min al-hadath, ritual purity. دخول الوقت, commencement of time. ستر العورة, covering the nakedness. طهارة من الخبث, physical purity. استقبال القبلة, facing the قبلة. النية, intention. قولوا قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك اشهد ان لا اله الا انت استغفرك واتوب اليك.